Hello, welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. This video is going to be about the updates that we're seeing from Games Workshop, the Garand updates, and specifically what we're going to be talking about is what I would like to see from these updates for each of the armies, and also talking about how Age of Sigmar could look in the future, and also how Age of Sigmar 4 has looked since its release. Let's start there. I think that's a solid point to talk about. Age of Sigmar 4 came out with a massive bang. It came out with an index edition, which means every single rule and every single unit got new rules or updates, and it had a new profile, which was a very exciting initial time for Age of Sigmar fans. Obviously, everyone got to deep dive the faction that they really love, look at new ways to play. Armies changed the ways that they played as well. Units that were really popular in 3rd edition kind of tailed off, some went up. Obviously, that's a classic Games Workshop, like high and low dip, stock market style way of playing, buying, and being invested in the game, which I know some people don't love. Some people are like, that's not really for me. That feels quite predatory. There's a great bunch of conversations to have there. I'm not really going to go into that in this video. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how I think the future could, how the future could look. But that definitely came out, and that was really exciting. Everyone got to try new stuff out. There was all the new missions. There was these manifestations that were free, which ended up being a bit annoying. But there was a bunch of stuff to look at, which is cool. Then we started to get the battle tomes. And with Stormcast and Skaven, they were kind of exciting because while most of the content was copy and pasted, any of the new miniature releases also brought with them new rules, new ways to play, and kind of a little bit more of a dynamic game state. Then, unfortunately, it got really dry. Every book after that was just a copy and paste. Pretty much all of the rules, apart from, like we saw, like Gravelords as an example, when we got some new units brought out, but even then they were pretty much transferable from what they were previously to what they were now, right? So I think the malaise, and there has been a malaise, and general kind of like down feeling about Age of Sigmar has kind of always been punctuated by the new rules release, which is the exact opposite of what you would want, right? You release a bunch of new rules, especially in the cycle that Games Workshop works in. They release a new edition every 3 years, which means I get my Stormcast book, and I'll always get my Stormcast book every 3 years. But if I'm playing, I don't know, Slaves to Darkness, I just got it released at the end, well, just at the, like 3 months, 4 months into Age of Sigmar 4, but I might get it 2 years into Age of Sigmar 5, which means it could be like a 5-year gap between getting my book and getting my new book. And that's a massive amount of time to get rules updates for your army, especially when a lot of these books, the internal balance, i.e. units that are good and bad. Slaves to Darkness is a great example, where Be'lakor is just so uber good versus any other hero you could ever take, versus like, and so are like obviously all of the actual warriors. So like warriors themselves, knights, Varangard, Chosen, versus all of the Dark Oath stuff. Still should be, Dark Oath should be its own book, right? Just go throw that and make it its own book. Then that would be more interesting. But the internal balance is pretty terrible, which means the internal balance might be terrible for like literally 5 years, which sucks because you might want to be in Slaves to Darkness because the Dark Oath are your things. It's also A, pretty bad game design, and also just B, like just sucks. It just sucks, right? Okay. So that's kind of where we've been at. And then Games Workshop have announced that they're doing these rules updates, the Garand updates. There's a new GHB, and they'll be doing a set of new rules for each of the factions leading up to the launch, which is super exciting. We're on day 2. We've already had 2 released, Skaven and Stormcast, and they're different already. The Skaven one was just a straight banger, 11 out of 10. It gave you new ways to play new armies. So it gave you the ability to run definitely a bunch of Doomflayers, like in a Doomflayer style list. Gave you more opportunity to run a bunch of Vermin Lords, and it gave you updates to some War Scrolls, specifically to the Gracie on Screaming Bell. Was the update, and the Brood Horror. Now, first thing I'll talk about, in case you didn't know or weren't aware, these alternative War Scrolls, you can use one or the other, which is good. Games Workshop's production method that they have, where when they produce a book, they can't invalidate a book, therefore they don't really update rules for units, means that if your unit sucked at launch, like we've seen with Stormcast and Iridan the Witness, if your book sucked at launch or your unit sucked at launch, it's going to suck, and it might suck for 5 years. Or it could, like the worst version of that is it obviously sucks for 6 years. So that's pretty terrible, right? And because they don't update it, because they bought 1 billion books initial print run and they stuck them all on the shelves all around the world, they don't want your local stockist or hobbyist, not that I really think they care about them, but they don't want them to like not be able to sell that Stormcast book on. They don't want to do it in their own stores, as an example. So these free updates are a way of like improving the units, which I think is really positive. But the Skaven one definitely felt like it was more impactful in what I want. What I would like to see from these updates is I would like to see more variety in army lists. So what I liked about yesterday's update is I definitely could see a Doomflayer style list, or at least taking more Doomflayers, and I could see a Vermin Lord style list, which I thought was really good. Today's Stormcast update hasn't quite hit that. Instead, today's Stormcast update has definitely improved Iridan the Witness. So if you love Iridan the Witness and you're like, that's why I want to play Stormcast, bang. You've got it. You've got everything you've ever wanted. But Stormcast is a massive book. I think it's nearly 100 war scrolls. It might be less than that. I can't remember the number. It's changed up and down. But there's a lot of stuff in there that obviously isn't get touched. And is it not going to get touched for a year? 2 years? More on that in a moment, because I think that's a really interesting thought as well. So I would definitely like to see more of the updates be more like the Skaven update than I'd like to see the updates more like the Stormcast update. I'd like to see them have broader appeal, be able to get, because I think that's what you should be doing. You should be having battle formations, which are what the old systems look like, the old like sub-factions used to be, which were thematic. And sure, old fans are definitely going to bully me in the comments. The sub-factions were also pretty much the same. Even though they wrote 4 or 5 thematic sub-factions, oftentimes one was the best. But I do think creating thematic factions, especially good for your casual/local hobbyist to go play with their friends or design a theme or kitbash an army, that was far more narrative and far more interesting than I think the battle formations have been, especially when several of the battle formations are copy and pasted between the different factions. It definitely doesn't make the armies feel like that they have a good self-identity. So I would like to see more of the sub-factions/battle formations be part of the updates for each of the releases, and I'd like to see each one of those get even more interesting ways to build different styles of armies, because the battle formations aren't very impactful really in the game, apart from the one that's always the best. And that because they don't really gear you towards theming your armies very much, that means that really the game becomes more of a stat check for your army. Sure, this unit is much better than that unit, and the sub-faction or the battle formation doesn't give you anything to make Unit B better than Unit A. So there's no real reason to, like, you know, have a discussion between the two. So that's the most impactful thing I think that they should be doing, balance aside. The reason I brought this up is because in the first video, a lot of people were saying that they should be making these, they should be doing these updates to make armies better in the game. I don't think that they should be doing these updates to make the armies better in the game. Definitely should be making units better for internal balance. So like Iridan was rubbish, now he's better. That's great. They should definitely be doing that, but they should be doing it so that they can build more interesting armies that are different from, like, you know, the kind of stylized army that we've seen at the moment in tournaments, as an example. I don't think they should be doing that. They should use the battle scroll updates to improve the balance of armies. They should be using these updates to build better single units, so they're more interesting, so the internal balance is more interesting, and making it so you can run different themed armies. I would say that's what I would prefer to see. I'd obviously also like them to be strong and good as well, but also giving you more tools on the tabletop to do more interesting stuff. We saw today the ability for Iridan to do a backflip. Backflip is great. That's fun. That's thematic. That's really cool. I'd love to see. Now, the hot topic is there's going to be one of these for each army over the course of the summer. That's quite a lot. It's 25 different releases that we're going to go through. But the real question I want you to answer in the comments, right? And the real thing that I want to bring up is, why stop there? The reason I talked about the beginning of Age of Sigmar 4 is the grumbling, and I think the quite fair kind of like sadness with the rules releases has got everyone a little bit down about the game state as is. Why can't we do one of these? I mean, what if there was one of these every week for the rest of the edition? I mean, an alternative war scroll for a different unit every single day is a crazy statement, but it would keep the community enthused. I know a lot of people are going to be like, wow, that'd be too much, Rob. I wouldn't be able to keep up. Well, if you don't care about Stormcast and you don't care about Iridan the Witness, then today's update has missed you completely. And it really, you don't have to keep up with it. It's not really a problem. When you get to the tabletop, ask yourself the genuine question, do you already know what every War Scroll does? Or are you still going to need to ask your opponent, okay, you've got Iridan the Witness, what does he do? And you're like, well, he does this. Okay, cool, I've not read his War Scroll. Does it matter which version they tell you? As long as you know what it does on the table, then that's a great question. Also makes the metagame very interesting, which is like the kind of, you know, if you're playing against Kragnos exists as an example. But if there was like an anti-Kragnos piece, which is we kind of saw from some of the Stormcast artifacts today, then something that can shut down Kragnos, does that mean you see less Kragnoses? Does that mean we see more monsters? Because Kragnos has got the ability to like smash through monsters. It's really interesting. It makes the metagame really wild. So the real question we need to ask ourselves is do we want a new alternative War Scroll every day for the rest of the edition forever? Will that create a lot of hype? Will it create a lot of burnout? I think people are going to be in one of two camps, because I'm sure, and please do leave them in the comments, you have a pet unit that you're like, this is my unit. For me, it's Seraphon and it's a spawner Chotek. He kind of sucks. I painted one up the other day. I'm trying to say to myself, I think I can make it work. Like, I'm going to be -1 AP now, or they're going to be -1 to their save. I'm going to do a Purple Sun. I've got my Saurus Warriors. That means I basically run 3. I'm going to kick their ass. But it's a lot of, like, moving parts. Maybe they could just make a spawner Chotek good. Maybe they could just do that, or at least make it more interesting, or do something more fun, right? Everyone has one that's like their unit that they think is rubbish, or could do something different, and the chat are all bringing up theirs. Like Vind wants Drecky Flint, Pershore wants Sinessa and Dixessa to improve, right? There's so much interesting stuff that they could do with this format, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think I understand where the not negative comments, but where the people are going to say like, oh, that's too much, it's going to be too overwhelming, but I don't think that's how it really works. Content's content, and it's fun. Like, it's interesting, and you can pick it up and put it down if you don't want it. You know, you could run an event and be like, no alternative War Scrolls at this event. Fine. Playing at an event with your friends, or not even an event, just a local club, you'd be like, no alternative War Scrolls. But having more stuff, I mean, the Age of Sigmar 4th books are already less content than the previous books. There were less artifacts, there were less traits, the battle formations were more boring. It's not a bad place to be. It also keeps the conversation really fresh and alive. I'm sure there's loads of people today who are thinking about Vermin Lords from yesterday, or thinking about Iridan the Witness from today. And that's great for the company, because they're going to make loads of money and selling stuff. But it's also great for the community. Everyone's discussing stuff, talking about stuff. Everyone's more interested in what's happening in the game. And that's really positive. I can't see that as a negative. And if this was the future, I don't know if I'm against it. I think I'm actually pretty pro it, to be honest. But I'd love to know what you think. That's going to be the question. So, number one, I want these updates to really diversify the sort of armies you can play. I don't think that they need to be affecting the power levels of armies, but sure, it'd be nice if definitely some of the worst performing armies came up a little bit. Definitely should be improving the power level of units, and then daily updates for the rest of our lives. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.